Are you tired of being told what to think and how to act? Well, you are not alone. In case you haven't realized it, you have an internal GPS. It knows all you need to know about how to live your life. So it's about time you stopped letting the media and the government tell you what is true for you. In fact, it is exactly that time. It's time to think for yourself. And here to make sure you're doing just that is your host, mediator, author, and lawyer, Carol Gold.
Hi, it's Sunday, March 9th. I'm Carol Gold, and welcome to Think for Yourself. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I'm going to be going over the principles in my book, The Questions God Will Ask Prepping for the Final Exam. Why? If everything is energy, then how we use it matters. It matters more than anything else in the world. It's why I am so passionate about the concept of right useness. Right useness means how we use energy determines our outcomes. It determines, in a very real sense, the world we create. I always use that example, the difference in the use of nuclear energy. Do you build a nuclear power plant or do you build a nuclear bomb? It's that literal in our lives, the right useness of energy. And as you know, and I say it in the book and I've said it in last week's podcast, religion teaches us about righteousness. It's a very hard concept for people to get their brain around, and it's even harder to feel as if you're living a righteous life. But if you use energy properly, the right useness of energy will make you righteous. In fact, if you take the O out of the word righteousness, what you wind up with is the word right useness. And right useness is what we are all supposed to do. Because, look, it's very simple. If everything is energy, then so are all of our thoughts and all of our actions. If I use my energy to hate someone or something, I'm misusing that energy. If I use my energy to love someone or something, then I'm using the energy correctly. I'm using it to create. I'm using it to bring light. I'm using it to enhance. It's the opposite of the misuse of energy, as in the example I gave of hating someone or something. So the questions God will ask is completely predicated around the principle of right useness. In today's episode, I want to talk about the first of the 12 principles, which is knowing, and the correct use or the right useness of the frequency of knowing. All of us are aware of the incredible stress and strain and just overwhelming news that we're all inundated with every day. We all manage to get by in our own ways, but a little help can never hurt. I believe that the principles in my book are tools that you can use, that anyone can use, to help you know, number one, if you're on track, moving in the direction you want to be in your own life, and two, are you actually, if I'm going to use the analogy, are you on track? Let me go to the metro line or the train that goes from New York down to Washington, D.C., There's the regular train and there's the Acela. So the Acela, in theory, is the fastest train. It's getting where you want to go at the optimal, let's say, speed. In the context of talking about the 12 principles and calling them tools, yes, each one is a tool, but the other part of that is that if you are using the tool correctly, then you're optimizing the benefit of it and you're reaping the benefit of it. Let me refresh what I started to talk about last episode. The 12 principles are actually 12 frequencies. What do I mean by that? Well, everything travels on a frequency. Sound, light. The simplest example I always give is AM and FM. You hear certain kinds of music on AM and you hear certain kinds of music on FM, and it's different because it's a different frequency. And every frequency vibrates at a variety of, vibrations within that frequency. Since everything is energy and everything vibrates at a specific frequency, including the organs in your body, every organ in your body vibrates at a different frequency. Your heart vibrates at a different frequency than your brain, than your kidney, than your liver. Since everything vibrates at a frequency, how do we describe energy traveling on a frequency at a variety of vibrations? Well, we have language, right? That's how we communicate things. So really, when we talk about something, and we talk about something applied or something in motion, we're really talking about a frequency, but we have to give it words when we're trying to, let's say, describe human behavior. The 12 principles, therefore, are actually 12 frequencies, but we have language, and in order to communicate them, each one has a name. The 12 that I picked for the book are the 12 that I think can be most helpful and most meaningful in our lives. The first principle is called knowing. Let me define it for you, and then let me talk about it for a bit. Knowing, as defined in the book, is the confidence and certainty that comes from personal experience. So why do I say there's confidence and certainty coming from personal experience? Well, maybe the way to best impress that upon you is to talk about what happens when you don't know something, when you don't have that confidence and certainty. That often happens when you have a belief or you have an idea that you got from someone else, that you picked up somewhere else, that was not the result of your direct experience. So I like to say that when you believe something or you have faith in something or you trust something, there's an element in that of uncertainty. There's an element of that of you don't really know that for yourself with certainty because you didn't experience it. You heard it or you read it or someone told you. It doesn't mean that that information or that idea is wrong. It just means that you don't know with certainty that it's accurate because you didn't experience it yourself. There's just a certain amount of belief and trust and faith in the things that you don't experience yourself. So knowing is, in a sense, the opposite of those three things. It's the opposite of belief or trust or faith. Because when you know something, it's because you've experienced it yourself. I'm defining knowing as the certainty and the confidence that comes from direct experience. So once you have an experience yourself, although it's subjective, and admittedly it's your personal experience, whatever it is you experienced, you can know with certainty. I tell the story of a conversation I had with a friend many years ago. He's Jewish, I'm Jewish. And in the midst of this conversation about God and spirituality, I said to him, you know, Don, if I opened my front door and a llama was standing there, and it was my experience that that llama was God, I would follow that llama anywhere. And he got really upset. And he said, Carol, you're a Jew. I'm a Jew. What do you mean that if you met or you opened your door and there was a Tibetan Lama standing there, that you would follow it anywhere? I said, no, not a Tibetan Lama, a llama, 4 legs, the animal, which made him even crazier, right? So he says to me, okay, you're telling me that if you opened your front door and a llama, 4 legs, was standing there, an animal, and it was your experience that it was God, you would follow it anywhere? I said, absolutely. I said, it's my personal experience. Moses talked to a burning bush. Joan of Arc heard voices in her head. When you have a personal experience, there's certainty around it. There's confidence that you take away from that experience. And it's very hard to bring doubt to such experiences. So, having delved a bit into what knowing is, let me talk about what happens in the book, the questions God will ask prepping for the final exam. So I've laid the groundwork that knowing is a frequency. It's a word I'm using for a specific frequency. And I'm saying that when you're on that frequency, what you have is certainty and confidence because you've had an experience of your own that puts you on that frequency, that allows you to be on that frequency. that frequency of knowing. In the book, for every single one of the principles, starting with knowing, there are 3 questions that you can ask yourself to know whether or not you are vibrating on the frequency of knowing at the highest possible vibratory rate. Because remember, within a frequency, there are variations of vibration. So every single principle in the book breaks down the definition of the principle as I've given it, and then gives you the 3 questions to know if you are basically on that Acela train. If you are vibrating at the highest frequency you can on that particular frequency. So let's look at knowing again. Knowing is the confidence and certainty that comes from personal experience. Okay, let me break it down. Confidence. What is confidence? Well, confidence is the ability to stand firmly in your truth when challenged by internal or external doubt. Internal or external doubt. So what happens? We may have an experience, we may be certain of what we've experienced, and then sometimes as we move away farther and farther from it, or further and further from it, we begin to doubt ourselves, or worse yet, someone shows up and undermines that confidence. So what's the question you ask yourself? You ask yourself, have I forgotten the certainty with which I formed my idea, and am I now allowing doubt to shake its foundation? The answer to that question, whatever it will be for you, will allow you to know where you stand in your confidence level of the thing that you are either advocating or the thing that you have internalized based on the experience you had. So that was confidence. The other quality of knowing is certainty. So what is certainty? Well, certainty is the unshakable knowing that comes from direct experience rather than faith or trust in another person's experience. So the question that you ask yourself to know where you stand in terms of the vibration of certainty is, what is it that I am certain of in this situation? Basically, what is it that I am unshakable about in this situation? And finally, as I said, it's personal experience, right? It all hinges on personal experience. You know, in the Bible, in the Old Testament and Torah, it doesn't say that Adam loved Eve. It doesn't say Adam had sex with Eve. It doesn't say Adam married Eve. It says he knew her. He knew her. Knowing. What does that mean, to know someone? Knowing someone is true oneness. Oneness is no barriers. Oneness is allowing someone else in and them allowing you in and you becoming one with them energetically. Why? Because you're vibrating at the same frequency. You've arrived at the same frequency through the experiences of your life. And there are a variety of those, we know. There are a multitude of frequencies. But when you meet a match, when you know someone, you and they are vibrating at the same frequency. So, personal experience, what is it? Well, it's reliance upon first-hand knowledge. First-hand knowledge. What's the question that you ask yourself? The question is, do I rely too often on what others or society says is true rather than relying upon my own experience, my own learning? So there you are. There are 3 questions, and they are predicated upon knowing. Knowing, again, is the confidence and certainty that comes from personal experience. And the questions you ask yourself are going to tell you, based on the honesty of your answers with yourself, are going to tell you where you are vibrating on the frequency of knowing. Are you weak on that frequency? Are you moderately optimizing that frequency? Or are you vibrating at the highest possible vibratory rate on the frequency of knowing? Meaning, in your life, are you having experience after experience after experience? Are you living your life so that you know what it is to be alive so that you know what truth is for you. Yes, there is objective truth, but each one of us has to come to it through our own life experiences, and you can't know the answer to what is true or what is not. You cannot know the answers to some of the most profound questions that get posed to us in our life philosophically, unless you've had an experience that allows you to know with certainty and confidence that something is true for you, and also to know how closely you are coming to being aligned with that ultimate truth. Why is knowing so important now? Well, because of the technology, because of the speed at which we're living our lives, because of the speed at which we are being inundated with information and data, because for most of us, our day is consumed with things that we have seen on the internet or seen on social media, the latest X tweet, the latest breaking news, the latest chirp of the phone, whatever that message is. Whoever sent us the latest important thing that we had to know immediately. We are consumed with information, the truth of which we haven't experienced. Now look, admittedly, you have to get a certain amount of information, fundamental information, foundational information, updated information from other sources, whether it's another person or it's the technology. Whatever it may be, you have to do that. So is it foolish for me to say, you have to have, everything has to be a personal experience? Well, you don't have time to do that, right? None of us do. And every experience in life can't be experienced by every single person. But within your own life, you are meant to have certain experiences. And one of them that you can have all the time is that when you hear something or read something, or your phone chirps and it's the latest piece of critical information, it isn't that you have to dismiss it and not rely upon it because it wasn't your own direct experience. But it is incumbent upon you to do a little homework, to take the thing you've heard or read or been texted or seen on social media or heard on the radio, whatever it is, television, whatever it is, wherever you've gotten the information outside of yourself, it is incumbent upon you to have the experience of trying to validate that information, of not taking it at face value, of getting on that frequency of knowing, even if you're at a lower vibratory rate, to at least get on the frequency of knowing. Ask yourself the questions. Do a little homework. Go into some kind of verification to know if what you're internalizing has any remote connection, not only to truth, but to what is beneficial and helpful to you in your own life. What is supportive of the experiences you're meant to have in your own life. The more AI infringes on our reality, the more we're going to live, I think, in our brains and not have these experiences that are so critical to knowing. Because getting more data, being able to speak 7 languages because you can learn them in 20 minutes by putting a chip in your head, whatever it is that's coming, they're not personal experiences. We have bodies for a reason. We are meant to experience the senses, the 5 senses. We are meant to interact with other humans. We are meant to know through direct contact, through intimacy, through engagement, through relationship. All of that is where knowing comes from. And it's the building block for everything that comes thereafter. So in the questions God will ask, prepping for the final exam, knowing is the first principle. It's foundational, as I said before. And if you familiarize yourself with the 3 questions, which are, have I forgotten the certainty with which I formed my idea, and am I now allowing doubt to shake its foundations? The second question is, what is it that I am certain of in this situation? And the third question, do I rely too often on what others or society says is true rather than relying upon my own learning? When you do that, you are fine-tuning yourself to a frequency that's going to act as a foundational block for everything you do in your life. Next podcast, I want to talk about the second principle, which is awakening. And it's an important principle since we've been inundated with, quote, wokeness, which is a very different thing from awakening, something that I'll explain in great detail next Sunday. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm Carol Gold, and I'll be back here again next Sunday. And until I am, by all means, think for yourself.
Carol thanks you for spending your valuable time with her. It is her mission to empower you to remember how smart and capable you are. Be sure to check out Carol's website, carolgold.com. That's Carol with an E, gold.com. Please leave a review and subscribe here so you'll be alerted to Carol's next podcast. Until then, above all else, remember, it's time to think for yourself.